Funding for the Money Stop with Jeff Maconi and Josh Hodges is provided by no one.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the very first edition of a new podcast that I'd like to call The Money Stop. I'm your presenter, Joshua Hodges, and now please help me welcome the star of this week's show, Stafford Speedway's Jeff Maconi.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, it could have gone better, but it's going all right for now.
That's good.
Yeah. All right, let's bring everybody up to speed here. Jeff, have you taken a look at the entry list for the 24 Hours of Daytona?
I've seen a lot of names thrown around. I know Jimmy Johnson's going to be running it, but I'll tell you what, that 10 car is always hard to beat.
There's always one car at the Rolex 24 that is always gotten my attention, the 911 car. It's the only car that's not American manufacturer that I actively root for during the
Right, yeah, the 911 typically has a lot of issues mid-race and has trouble making it the full 24 hours, but I believe last year both cars had a pretty good run. I think it's two that enter every year.
The 912 car is a secondary car. I don't know if it's supposed to serve as a backup car or if it's just there to capture the extra points for the team. I don't know the IMSA scoring system.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with it either, but I believe they're both owned by the same team, and I know both have a lot of trouble making it the full 24 hours every year.
There were a couple of names in particular that I thought were kind of interesting. Here are the names that caught my attention on the list, on the starting grid. We've got, in the CGR number 01, we've got Scott Dixon. I'm a big IndyCar fan, so all the IndyCar drivers were the first ones to capture my attention. We got the JDC number 5. We got Bourdais. This is embarrassing because Mike Conway and Chase Elliott are driving in the 31 car together, and I know Mike Conway. I know the name. I just don't know what discipline he is.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
We've got Jimmy Johnson and Simon Pagenaud in the Whelen 48 car. We've got. Here's a combination you can never go wrong with. In the Mayor number 60, we've got Pablo Montoya and A.J. Allmendinger.
That's going to be awesome. I know A.J. Allmendinger's doing a lot of road course racing, especially for Kaulig this next upcoming year, but to make a run the
he's going
24 is going to be
full-time
awesome.
for Kaulig.
Right, but I know primarily last year he was doing a lot of road course racing, and I think his best shots at wins is going to be in the road courses this year.
Yeah, you can say that again. Another driver that caught my attention, another pair of drivers actually, in the Rick Ware Racing 51, we've got Cody Ware and Austin Dillon. That's going to be kind of interesting because Austin Dillon is driving in NASCAR for a more or less top-tier team. I say the term more or less because of their recent resurgence. And yet, Rick Ware Racing, in NASCAR at least, it was one of those teams that had underfunded equipment.
Right, they run 4 cars each week, and they're not even all on the same manufacturer at times. So
well, see, that's the one good thing about being an underfunded team. If you don't have factory support, you're not stuck with the same badge on all 4 cars.
Right, and so that gives a lot of different drivers opportunities throughout the year to run up in the Cup Series.
Okay, in the RMS number 74, we've got Spencer Piguet, and I only know of Spencer Piguet because his big wreck at Indy last year caused a checkered caution at the 500.
That's right. Yeah, that was towards the end of the race.
And a lot of people were saying that they should have thrown the red. The trouble with that is, personally, I don't think IndyCar should go to having to do green-white checkered finishes. I think we should have at least one division that keeps checkered cautions running like clockwork.
I suppose it's good for the consistency, and making a rule just for one race, the Indy 500 each year, wouldn't be beneficial.
And then the Corvette number 3 team is Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor. Name sounds familiar. I can't recall his discipline, though.
He drove the LMP2 with the number 10 car that wins every year, Wayne Taylor Racing. He drove that car for the past few years. He's got quite a few Daytona Rolex 24 wins under his belt.
Real quick, because we're running low on time on this segment, 2 biggest headlines I've seen relating to motorsports on NBC. First of all, NBC's main sports network is shutting down by the end of the calendar year. The other one, which bothers me more so, is that IndyCar is getting shuffled over to Peacock with no announcement on how that affects the big 3 races. St. Petersburg, Long Beach, I don't know if they're doing that one this year, and the Indy 500.
Yeah, it throws a lot of things up in the air behind the scenes, especially with broadcasting for NASCAR and other divisions and other series. But
Yeah. Okay, and time is up for this segment, but now that you mentioned that, I mean, one of the things that is not up in the air is that some of the sports coverage, not motorsports per se, but sports in general, is getting shifted over to USA Network. So that's going to be interesting.
that'll be very interesting. It should help USA Network's ratings.
Yeah, because their ratings haven't been quite the same since Monk and Psych went off the air.
Right. So this could help them a ton. And the competition caution is out.
What rule change would you like to discuss for this
Well,
first
the
show?
first rule change that comes to mind is just a few days ago, they adjusted the rules in the quote-unquote Chase Elliott rule that helped him win the championship last year, where the pit crew member, the Jackman, jumped over the wall too soon and was able to run back, reset himself on the wall, and avoid a penalty. That rule is now removed. They can't reset themselves on the wall anymore.
So once you're over the wall, you're over the wall.
Right. Once you're over the wall, that's it. And if it's too early, then the team will be penalized.
Okay. Well, that's going to be very interesting to see how that rule plays out. Do you think it's going to have an impact on anybody's season? I'm not so sure that it is.
Well, the rule comes into effect very rarely. You don't hear about it too often. Crew members going over the wall too soon is not a common penalty, especially not when they go back and reset themselves. I don't recall another time where this was even mentioned.
You know something? As far as I'm aware, that exception had been in the rule book, but it's the only time ever that the exception was applied.
Right. So the fact that it isn't applied often probably won't make too much of a difference in competition.
Okay, so that rule change had been in effect. Who would have been the Final Four last season?
I think Kevin Harvick would have made it in.
Well, Harvick would have... If they had done the championship on points alone, he would have locked up the championship 2 races prematurely.
Right. You know, he had a very good season, but with the new package and you have to adapt to the different tracks every round, it rewards not only consistency throughout the regular season, but the ability to perform under pressure.
There's one rule change that I'd like to see him make to the playoffs. When the chase, as we knew it back in the day, first came out, it was just the top 10 in points, plus anybody within a 400 points deficit of the points leader. Of course, this was back when it was 180 points to the win, something like that. Then we evolved into this win and you're in format with 16 drivers. The only spot that's guaranteed is for the points leader, wins or no wins. At least that's how it was for the first 3 years of it. I don't know whether or not that rule still applies with these bonus points for the stages.
I'm not entirely sure.
Here's what I'd like to see him try. The win and you're in elimination playoff has stirred up so much controversy. Everybody says it was designed to prevent a winless champion in the wake of Austin Dillon being a winless champion on points alone in the Xfinity division. Something that could conceivably happen in the chase. That is, you could lock up the championship prematurely in the chase. If we had the original chase in 2017, Truex would have locked it up 1 race prematurely. He was that good. Well, how about, and ironically, every year except 2015, we've had at least one finalist on a national level who went winless up until the last race. And sure enough, Matt Crafton destroyed the system 2 years ago. Here's what I'd like to see him try. Instead of win and get in, let's have a win and stay in system. 16 guaranteed in the playoff, plus anybody else with at least 1 win. The eliminations are based on... Okay, I'm already out of time, but I'm going to finish this up. If you can't catch them mathematically by a certain cutoff, you're out. But if you win during that round between cutoffs, you stay in for the points reset. In other words, Kevin Harvick would have stayed in for the last round, but Chase Elliott on his win would have been added as a 5th finalist. This is just hypothetical. You get what I'm saying?
Right, I understand.
And actually, in my upcoming series, NASCAR Speedrunners, I'm going to try a demonstration of that kind of point system. We're at the choose cone. I'm going to ask you this question. This is just an icebreaker question. It serves literally no purpose as far as motorsports are concerned. But it does have something to do with your career as an announcer. Would you rather be an announcer for, given the choice, for Major League Baseball or the National Football League? Either way, pick a specific team.
I would probably go with Hmm. I would probably go with football because you have a week in advance where you can watch all the stats. You know everything that's going to be happening. You know how the other teams have performed week by week. You don't have as much data to look over. There's less theoreticals, I suppose, than in baseball. But with baseball, you get to compare how they do over the course of a 3 or 4 game series. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. I really don't have a specific football team in mind. I don't watch too much of the NFL. I pretty much just turn on and enjoy the games. But I would probably say the NFL over the MLB.
And no preference for a team?
Not in particular, no.
Not even Patriots?
I honestly don't watch too much of it, but I've enjoyed watching Tom Brady this year doing well. And I hope to see him win the Super Bowl. I think that would be phenomenal.
Remind me when we get off track to address something very unique about this year's Super Bowl. So for this first My Racing concept, if you will, Jeff, I want you to pick a team in either IndyCar or NASCAR where you have total control of it. You could have up to 5 cars on the team. You control the numbers, you control the drivers, you control the paint jobs, everything. IndyCar, NASCAR, doesn't matter.
I would probably go with something in NASCAR and focus primarily on building a team that would perform in the current year and be able to expand on it.
Mind you, you have total control of an otherwise real-world team, like RCR or Hendrick or KBM, something like that.
I would say Hendrick then, because I think the team has the most potential, especially this year with their driver lineup and everything. I think what they need is one really experienced driver. Get someone like, honestly, Kevin Harvick would be perfect. Come over, have the solid equipment under them that they can make something happen with. They're proven, their experience.
By the way, you don't have to limit it to living active drivers. You could choose a deceased driver or a retired driver if you want.
In that case, I would bring back Jeff Gordon in his prime. I think he was absolutely phenomenal no matter where you go. It was the ovals, the road courses, short tracks, didn't matter.
Okay,
he was able to go out and perform.
Okay, so how many cars do you have on your version of Hendrick Motorsports? 2 to 5?
I would say with 4, with the current lineup, keep 4 drivers there.
And what car numbers did you pick?
I would say 00, 24, 48, and I don't know, 54, that would work.
Okay, who goes in what car?
Jeff Gordon would stay in the 24. Move, let's say Landon Castle to the 48. I think he would be good. He's able to bring home equipment in one piece and maximize the performance of it. I think if he were in a top-tier ride, he would perform well above anyone's expectations. It's awesome to see. He's going to do great work down there with JD Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, but I think there's so much more potential there, and it's amazing that a top team hasn't picked him up. It shows the importance of sponsorship in racing at this point. So then you'd need a new, younger driver. I'm going to put my personal bias out there and say Anthony Alfredo, throw him in the 00 for Hendrick, and I think that would be good. He's got a lot of potential. I think you're going to see he's going to become a household name here in a few years if he can just get into that top tier equipment. But he's going to perform really well with Front Row Motorsports this year, I think.
And that leaves the 48 car. Who do you put there?
I think Landon Castle is going to go there to the 48, but I think the 4th car was the 54.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the 54. Who goes there?
I would. That is also tough. You need someone that's showing potential in the lower ranks and can work their way up. I would probably say Noah Gragson. I think he's got a lot of potential if he can just rein in and focus his driving talent and just leave everything out on the track and make something happen there. I think he would do very well. I think he's going to do very well once he gets up to the Cup Series.
All right. So now it's my turn to pick up my racing lineup for any team that I want. And for me right now, I am caught dead between 2 real-world teams. I'm caught between Richard Childress Racing and Kyle Busch Motorsports. See, Richard Childress Racing, my pick for a lineup in RCR. There are drivers in that grid that were never on the team at the same time, except for, I believe, 2. 3 if you count. 3 if you count overlap with one of these drivers. So it's either that or it's Kyle Busch Motorsports. But the twist is that Busch himself does not drive for the team at all. And these 5 drivers, this specific lineup, I don't believe ever raced together in one sustained race. But 4 out of the 5 were in a truck at any given time. F it, I'm gonna go with my first pick and go with Richard Childress Racing. Remember, I said that this doesn't have to be limited to living or active drivers. So naturally, I pick Dale Earnhardt to be part of my fantasy lineup of RCR. And I should point out the car lineup, you have the 3 car, the 29 car, and the 31 car. And then I'm going to stick with the 27 and the 33. And here's my picks for those lineups. Dale Earnhardt in the 3 car. You got Kevin Harvick in the 29 car. You got Robbie Gordon in the 31 car. Having Robbie Gordon on the team all but ensures the team has a legitimate shot at the road courses, because out of all the drivers in RCR's history, I think Robbie Gordon was statistically best at the motorsports. I did crunch the numbers, and while they don't show during his specific tenure with the team, they do show from his career overall. And then that leaves the 27 car and the 33 car. For sponsorship purposes, I would put Paul Menard in the 27, and then you have Austin Dillon in the 33 car. Now here's the twist. This is a 5-car team, but they're operating under the current 4-car rule, and what you do is you rotate the drivers that don't... You rotate one driver every week that sits out a race. You leave Dale Earnhardt and Kevin Harvick on the track every week, and then you have Robbie Gordon, Paul Menard, and Austin Dillon rotating between sitting out. The sole exception to the rule would be the Daytona 500 due to its unique qualifying format, because odds are pretty good at least one of them will not qualify anyway. And actually, I would argue that all 5 should run qualifying for all the restrictor plate tracks, and whichever one of them is out qualified by everybody else should just sit it out. Period. Even if they didn't have the 4-car rule and they didn't fail to qualify, you should still have one of them sit out. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's what I would do for my fantasy lineup. Before time runs out, I gotta ask, which of our fantasy lineups? Oh, too late. Time's already up. I'll ask you next. I'll ask you on the next show. Okay, where are we? Oh no, here we go. We are in the vent. This is that part of the show. If there's something that's pissing us off, let them have it. Let the world know. You know what I'm saying? It's helpful.
Honestly, I don't have too many grievances with anything.
Not even in the world of motorsports?
Not really.
Well, I have one grievance in the world of motorsports. Remember earlier in the show I mentioned IndyCar being moved over to Peacock with no announcement of how that'll affect the crown jewel races, which at this point are St. Pete, Long Beach, maybe, and Indy 500.
Right.
I have a problem with what's been happening to IndyCar coverage over the past 4 years. Starting in, I can't remember if it was 2017 or 2018, but in one of those years, NBC completely took over IndyCar coverage. Before, it was split between ABC and NBC, or ESPN and NBC Sports. And you have the first half dozen races up to the Detroit doubleheader. Those were all on ABC. and then the rest were on NBC Sports. And my favorite part of the IndyCar season, I always tended to watch the IndyCar races when they were on ABC for one reason and one reason only. Alan Bestwick and Jack Arute.
They're a great announcing team.
I mean, from our background at Stafford, I'm sure you've seen some of the old videos of Mike Joy and Jack Arute announcing together.
I have.
Now that's a dynamic duo in its own right. But like, my two favorite announcers of all time, and I'm sorry, my apologies to Jack Arute if you're listening to this show, but my two favorite announcers of all time, as far as the lap-by-lap guys, Mike Joy and Alan Bestwick. I got Mike Joy on Fox, and I got Alan Bestwick on ABC, and I would get them in the first half of the overall motorsports season. Well, when IndyCar went all to NBC, I lost Alan Bestwick. Of course, the loss of Jack Arute was insult to injury, and I haven't heard Alan Bestwick on any motorsports since. Now, I should point out, Lee Diffie, the Australian announcer, he's a great announcer. It's great to hear him on IndyCar, and it's a real treat when he fills in for Rick Allen on NASCAR on NBC. That's a real treat for me, because it adds just a little bit extra class to the races. You following me so far?
I got you.
I'm about to lose Lee Diffie too now, and I'm sick of all my favorite announcers having their coverage either dropped altogether or shifted to premium access channels, or in the case of IndyCar to Peacock streaming services. Pretty soon there's going to be no coverage left at the rate they keep transferring all the services. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I follow you.
It's getting to a point now where you can't even climb your way up the ladder. Not you personally, but the understood you. You can't even climb up the ladder when the ladder is being taken away from the construction site. And that's my biggest issue with it. The more coverage keeps being moved over to outlets where fewer and fewer people will have access, at least people on low budgets, eventually people are going to stop listening to these kind of events altogether. That's my concern. The worst part is, if that happens, the art of being a motorsports announcer will become a dying trade. It's like driving a stick.
Nope, all good.
Okay, I'm done.
Nope, I'm here. I got you.
Okay, getting off track already, and now we're going to get even more off track. You know what's coming up in about a week, right?
The Rolex 24?
That's this weekend, you nimrad!
Oh yeah, I guess. It's coming up this weekend, but...
The Super Bowl is next weekend.
That's right, that is.
How can you forget that? It's probably the one sporting event that gets more coverage than the Daytona 500.
That's true. We've got that coming up in a few weeks as well.
2 weeks. I don't like this. I don't like how they how they crunched the Speed Week schedule, but I'll save that for next week's show. This is going to be an interesting Super Bowl for a number of reasons. It's going to be Tom Brady's 7th Super Bowl, his first without the Patriots. It's going to be the Chiefs' 2nd consecutive Super Bowl. And this is going to be the first Super Bowl in which one of the competing teams doesn't go to the Super Bowl. They stay for the Super Bowl, because the Buccaneers Arena had already been picked to host the Super Bowl. This is the first time in history that that's happened. As luck would have it, the Buccaneers are the designated home team this year because their division gets the home designation in an odd year. We're in 2021. If this were last year or next year, they would have been the designated visiting team. So this is just a perfect storm of things that have never happened in the history of Super Bowl, and I'll bet you $1 will never happen again. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's quite interesting how everything came together, but I'm excited to watch Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. It's sort of silencing everyone that said, "Oh, he's just, a franchise quarterback. He's only good with the Patriots, and it's all Bill Belichick behind the scenes." Now Tom Brady is a heck of a quarterback.
That's what they all said about Kevin Harvick leaving RCR.
Right, and I think Tom Brady's going to do well. I hope he wins it.
And it's very interesting. I thought that something like this would never happen after the St. Louis Rams lost the championship in 2017, because that was the year that their arena was to host the Super Bowl.
Right, so it was close there, but it actually happened this year.
I actually got into an argument with my best friend over why that arena was hosting the Super Bowl in the first place. This was St. Louis. He told me that St. Louis was picked to host the Super Bowl because it's in the South, and they only host the Super Bowl in the South. But that's not necessarily true. Arenas in the North can host the Super Bowl provided that they meet specific criteria. In fact, this goes to all of the arenas in the Football League. You have to have at least 70,000 seats in the arena. You have to have a separate practice space for both teams on the property. You have to have about 2,000 square miles of parking space. There must be enough hotels in the area to accommodate that many guests and the press. You have to have separate press boxes for television and radio crews. In the case of the northern arenas, you have to have either a fixed or retractable dome. One arena got a waiver on that, and I think it was the one in New Jersey. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, and I think logistically it's just easier to get people to go to the Super Bowl down in the South because it's warmer. You're not going to suffer through the wind and snow and cold and everything for a 3-hour, 4-hour football game.
Again, there's a half dozen arenas up north here with retractable or fixed domes, so they won't have that problem.
Right.
Of course, arenas have to either have an average game day temperature of not less than 50 degrees, or they have to have the roof. One city, not meeting either of these criteria, got a waiver by the NFL, and I don't know how they got it. So there's a multitude of, my friend and I were arguing over why the Patriots Stadium has never hosted the Super Bowl, and it's not limited to the wind chill factor. There's a shortage of seating in the arena to start with. There's only one practice space on the property, and I think there might be a shortage of parking space. My fiance lives out by Patriots Stadium, so that's how I know all this.
I mean, yeah, that all sounds correct to me on my limited knowledge of it. Unfortunately, I don't know too much about football stadiums, so.
One more segment, and then we're going to wrap it up, and then the show will be over. Oh, perfect timing. This is probably going to become the fan favorite segment of the show, assuming we get fans in the first place. Dueling drivers. Only this week we're not doing dueling drivers. We're doing entire teams dueling against each other. And I'm going to give you the choice, okay? Your first choice is CGR versus Penske. The second choice is Fox versus NBC.
Personally, I prefer Fox over NBC any day of the week.
By the way, have you noticed that throughout this entire show, maybe you can't hear it, but the beeps at the top of each segment are the same beeps for the running order scroll that Fox NASCAR used in the early days.
I didn't know that. That's a cool little detail.
Yep.
I guess the announcing team far more, and I'm excited to see Clint Boyer added to it. I think the two-man booth worked well, but adding a third person in also works very well and adds another element to the announcing and to the whole broadcast in general. I find that they are able to capture more action. Their camera crew is better, I think.
Well,
and I just enjoy the quality more on Fox.
For
bringing it back to the action. So
I like the NBC song late in the regular season and then into the chase or the playoffs. That's when I listen to the NBC NASCAR theme song, and I don't mean just on the coverage. I mean I actually go onto YouTube and listen to it, punching it in the search bar.
That's fair.
Pick a specific trio of announcers for both networks that you like best.
I think Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon, and Darrell Waltrip was a great combination. I like those three all together. And I also like the duo of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Steve Letarte. I think those guys are good together.
For the Southern 500, having Dale Jr. and Kyle Petty in the booth together, that was awesome. Like, Kyle Petty is my favorite of the announcers of all time on NBC, and I know he did some coverage on Fox before, but I think he has a better chemistry at NBC. As far as Fox goes, there's no question. My favorite combination ever, there was one all-star race. For that particular all-star race, it was Mike Joy and both of the Waltrip brothers in the booth together. That was epic.
Yeah, that sounds like a great trio up there in the booth.
We're out of time for this week's show. We'll premiere next week's show on Saturday. Will you be joining us again next week?
That sounds good to me.
Okay, then that settles it. We'll be back on the air next Saturday night at 8 o'clock. Our apologies once again to Jack Root. Say goodnight, Jeff.
Thanks for having me on.